All right, so this is one of two very large mahogany front doors that I'm building for a customer for their custom home. But I have serious doubts that the wood filler that I bought from the store will actually match the color and tone of the mahogany that I'm using on the doors here. And if it does match, then this video is going to be over very, very quick. But if it doesn't match, then we're going to have to make our own custom wood filler so we can fill in the ugly seams and nail holes on these doors. And by the end of this video, you will be the judge on whether the custom wood filler that we make actually works or not.
Nothing.
Now, I was commissioned to make these mahogany front doors, these very large mahogany front doors for a customer for their new home. Now, just to give you some context, this is the first time that I've ever built these huge front doors before. Actually, it's the second time that I've built these front doors, but we're not gonna talk about those. Now, if you are a door expert or you know anything about doors at all, don't judge me based on this door here. That's because my tool setup is less than ideal for a big project like this. I'm just running a contractor table saw. So all the rip cuts on these long boards were done by the lumber company where we got our mahogany. And then the cross cuts were done on a less than ideal miter saw station that really isn't set up for these long boards like this. So, you know, cut me some slack here. We've got wind fan spinner just going to town there, just creating all this noise. I don't know if you can hear that in the... Now you're gonna notice gaps within the seams and some nail holes here. We need to fill with our wood filler so this thing looks good for our customer. All right, so I could choose to leave all these seams and nail holes in these doors just as they are because you're likely not gonna notice them after you put a finish on them. Well, you might. Okay, probably. No, you actually will. So if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right? Because you know what they say, how you do anything is how you do everything. So let's go ahead and give our store-bought wood fillers here their fair shake at the game. I have white oak, maple, cherry, and of course, red mahogany. And just so we don't F up our nice doors that we've worked so hard to build, I'm using some cutoffs here from this project so we can test our store-bought wood fillers because I really don't think that they're gonna work that great, but let's give them a shot. So let's go ahead and start with our white oak. I'm just gonna move these here. I will put white oak on our first seam here. Spread on there pretty liberally. Just like that. Good, so that's white oak. And on that same side, on that same board here, on the opposite side, we'll do maple. I have a feeling that these two are gonna be way too light and create contrast to the wood that we're using. Venturing over here to the next ones, we have cherry, which is red. And just add that in, and I have a feeling that cherry is just gonna be too red because it is awfully red. I'm not a huge fan of red woods. This mahogany though, I have to say is really, really pretty. I wouldn't want it to be any redder than it is, so depending on what kind of finish they put on it, it could look really awesome. And now for red mahogany. Now this is the one that should match, right? Because this is red mahogany. Actually, I think it's African mahogany. It's probably a lot less red than red, but this doesn't look very red. You know, when you look at it, it looks more like a walnut with just a skosh of red in it. So maybe they should say walnut with a skosh of red. Now that about does it right there. We're gonna let these dry and then we'll give them a good sanding and we'll take a look at how they look after that. Here's how our store-bought wood fillers actually turned out. Starting with white oak here, and you can see in the seam that it definitely has a white tone to it. And then of course, our maple is even lighter than our white oak. So those two definitely not gonna work. Now, I didn't have a really big gap to close with the cherry, but you can see when you look up really close, there is definitely a redder tone to the cherry. And then of course we go over here to the red mahogany, and our red mahogany turns out kind of like, well, it'd be good for walnut. The red mahogany would look great as a walnut filler. I just don't think that our store-bought wood fillers are gonna cut it for our high-end mahogany front doors that we built here. So the only thing that we can do is make our own custom mahogany wood filler for our doors, our mahogany doors. Wood filler. Wood filler. All right, so for the ingredients that we're gonna be using here on our custom wood filler, of course, the mahogany sawdust that we just collected with our sander, and our glues here that we'll mix it with. And for the tools that we're gonna be using, we're gonna start with a putty knife and then a scrap piece of 1/4 inch MDF. Now, does it have to be a scrap 1/4 inch MDF? Yes. All right, so we're gonna start off with our Titebond 1 here, and we're just gonna empty out some sawdust onto our 1/4 inch scrap piece here. Gonna give it a fine squirt right on to our piece of MDF here, just like that. And then the reason why Titebond 1 here is a couple reasons. One is that it is a lighter glue, so it dries lighter and is good for light colored woods. And this mahogany has some light and darkish tones, so I don't know, we'll see. The other benefit to Titebond 1 is that it has a slow dry time, so really just mix that up here, and that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and apply it to our sample here. We're just gonna put that in, just like that. You know, it is a glue, so you're gonna have to, you know, when you sand it off, you're gonna have to really kind of sand it off, but I like to be liberal to get it down in to the seam or the crease or nail hole, whatever it is you're trying to fill there. That's looking pretty good right there. All right, so I think that's good for the Titebond 1. All right, so a side note here, I'm using about a 1-to-1 ratio here of sawdust to glue. So 1 part sawdust, 1 part glue. And really you're going after a nice paste-like viscosity. All right, so let's go ahead and work with our Titebond 3 here and get that set up. Again, we're just gonna bring out some of our sawdust here. Again, I do about a 1-to-1 ratio, just like if it were the Titebond 1. And you're just gonna kind of blend it in until you get that nice paste-like consistency that we were talking about earlier. It's looking good, getting a nice paste here. All right, so that's looking good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that into our seam here. And again, same thing. I like to get plenty of it on there so I can go down into the seam or the nail hole. And when you do that, when you sand it down, there's still enough in there to fill the gap when you sand it down nice and flush. That's looking pretty good. We just need to let that dry just a little bit, and then we'll give it a good sanding. Now, I like to let the glue dry just a little bit. I don't want it to dry too much, making it harder for us to sand. But once it dries just a little bit, I take my custom buffing pad, which is my hand, and I just go over it pretty aggressively just to get off any of the excess glue that's built up and kind of rub in the glue that's on there. Now, after giving our piece here a good thorough hand job, a good buffing job, a thorough buffing job. So after giving our piece here a good thorough buffing job with our hand, I like to sand it down with 180 grit sandpaper. All right, I'd say that looks pretty dang good, actually. You know, with this side here being our Titebond 1 and this side being our Titebond 3, man, that looks really good. I like that. Now the question is, should we use Titebond 1 or Titebond 3 on our custom doors here? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so So all we gotta do now is let our custom wood filler here dry on the doors before we can sand it down and see what it looks like.
Oh, yeah. I can sand them down. What? I'm still working on them. Seriously. How am I gonna get this done by tomorrow? All right, team.
All right, so as you heard, the customer needs these doors delivered and installed pronto, right now. I'm gonna have to get them loaded, delivered, and installed before I can sand these down, and we can see what our custom wood filler looks like on our finished and installed doors. All right, I just finished up the final sanding on the doors. Let's go take a look and see how the custom wood filler turned out. All right, so was that extra step worth the time and effort to get those doors right? Leave a comment below and let me know. All right, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. All right, and if you'd like to hang out with me in the shop on more projects like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you on the next video.